Alrighty, so welcome one and all. This is going to be a bit of a wandering tour of alter reports, which I incorrectly spelled alert reports in the spiel. So Patrick followed that course and also spelled it wrong in the communications, but it's actually alter reports. It's a reporting tool that I found when I was looking for a particular to solve a particular problem, and I'll take you through some of the work that I've done with it. But it's actually really simple to get up and running. It's got some really good features, and if you're wanting to be able to provide any sort of report or data extract, it's super simple. Got lots of options, and it's pretty neat to use. Doesn't do graphs. So if you're looking for a charting tool, there's others like we've talked about previously. Quite a lot, I think, there's one that uses charting tools, but this is for basically for straight out extract, and it's quite flexible. I haven't gone into every last corner of it, but what I see of it, it's quite good, and it was a good opportunity to just run through some of the early things that I found with it to date. So anyway, without anything further, I'll get on the road. I don't profess to be a complete expert in this product, this component, but you can get the idea from it and see how you go. So I'll just share my screen. And we'll get underway. So it's from AlterBrains. They do a couple of other products which you may be familiar with. They do some work with, where is it? Alter Reports. Mighty Sites was the other one that Nathan mentioned previously that he'd had some exposure to. They've got reasonable support from what I have used, which is very little. So I can only say that it is reasonable. So basically the module, the component installs on version 3 or 4. This is just an example Joomla 4 site. I installed the sample data just to give us something to work with, and then I can take you through some of the more complicated reporting that I've been able to put together. So it's pretty straightforward, just installs really simply. It's not complicated. There's basically 3 major sort of headings. There's reports, report categories, and databases. And we can go through the options area as well. So basically, you've got front end and back end views, and some default for the types of extracts that you want to get out of the system. So basically, the main outputs are CSV, Excel, PDF, XML, or HTML, or an actual email, and that's got some pretty cool options in there. You've got categories, layouts, and some advanced features in here. If we just go through to the front end default settings, and you can change these on every report that you build, so you're not committed to one size fits all. Basically, you can select, where you can select this to be the only options you've got at a report level. But you can set it to have individualized report settings, which is what I've got on by default. List limits, obviously, again, default. Report layouts, default. The title, whether to show or not. Intro text, pagination. There's quite a few sort of options down here, row counters and various other things. You can have headings, subheadings, row numbers, footers, count the clicks, and whether or not you allow downloads from the front end or not. And you can have different styles for different types of report outputs. Again, you can have a show or not show the print button and allow the user to select it. So there's some reasonable options there for front end, and also back end is an identical set of options. Each of the report formats, and I won't go through every one of them, but each of the report output formats, you can also set some options, whether or not you can allow the user to download in a particular format. So you may want them only to be able to download a PDF or only download an Excel format. It has some clever tag sort of arrangements here, which are quite clear. You can construct a file name to be unique by using name, alias, year, month, day, any of these features. And it's got this concept of filter tags, which we'll brush on briefly as well. And you can also pick up some of the current user, the signed in users details. So you can pick up the user's name or their ID using this kind of tag here. So you can include a report output to have a person's individualized name as it's extracted. And there's also some options here for zipping the file and whether or not you can allow a partial download. So you may have a filter view on a report table. You can actually allow the user to pick field 3, 5, 7, and 8 and export just those records rather than the entire output of the table. So that's an option on each of the reporting styles. Again, you can choose your delimiter for CSV, and for Excel, you've got some other different choices as well of styles and things. Obviously, with CSV, there's not much to style. So there's quite a well laid out set of options here for the defaults, and you can see how comprehensive that is there, even on the email thing, which we can do a test in a little bit. Categories are basically your report categories. So you can have a hierarchical view of category levels and how you lay them out, whether you want to see all categories or how many levels deep you want to go, all settings in the options, and whether or not you want to display empty categories. And then on the individual category itself, what it should show and so on. So quite well laid out. As I said, you've got some other constraints. So if you've got a big report, you don't want it to time out, or you want it to continue until it runs to the end, you can force some execution time variables into the system, which I haven't had to do, but I can understand why you'd want to be able to do that. So just hopping back to the three sort of areas here. We've got reports, report categories, and databases. So if we have a look in the report categories, obviously it's pretty familiar. I don't have to tell you how categories work, but basically you can reorder, have hierarchical levels, copy a category, and just as you can do save and copy, all this sort of standard stuff that you would expect out of a Joomla category list. And you can assign that category to a certain access level. One of the other nice things you can do is you can bring additional external databases into the report area. So not only can you report from within your current database, you can actually create an additional external database completely independent of your current database structure. So you could have a mirror site or a wholesale and a retail site, which could be actually in two different Joomla databases, or could be something completely independent, a POS system, or some other form of data that you hold, and you can basically grab that information, set up the connection, and use that in your data queries in this system. So that's kind of nice if you're wanting to sort of represent data from an external source. So if we just quickly have a look at how a report comes together, I'll just create a new one and then we'll come back to some of the features in each. And obviously you can export and import those reports as well. So basically title up here. And you can have an alias, obviously. The first tab, basically this block here of content appears at the top of your report screen. So when the report's generated, you could have an image, or you could have a, some summary text or a headline or whatever you wanted to have. And that basically sits above your report filters. Publishing, also we've got the standard, published, categorized, and access levels and tags and whether it's been downloaded, how many times, etc. We've got publishing, start and end, what day it's created, all the usual things which we expect these days. Content rights, keywords, metadata, and then comes the first really important tab, and that is basically how to get your data. Now, it's got some really cool features in here, which do a number of things. Once we've saved this report and started to build it up, we can check the SQL for syntax errors. And it will also give us a bit of a profile output of what it would actually query. Because one of the things that it does do is uses the standard sort of format of, which is used internally in Joomla for table referencing. So if you put the hash underscore table name, that then replaces it in the profiler. So you can copy the text of the profile output and run it in your MySQL, in your PHPMyAdmin or whatever tool you happen to use. So you can see down here, it's obviously using the default database, but if we had a third-party database, we could pick the data straight from there as well. Once we've got a default ordering, once we've got a column on our report, we can set the default ordering from this basis here. And there's some other quite neat ways we can do additional ordering and so on. But to get us going, and because we all know Joomla so well under the covers, we can just hit this insert table column, and you'll see down here is a list of columns. So we can go content, and we can also view the columns within the content table. So we can basically start building our query up here. So select, and then we might want to insert the ID. In fact, I inserted it twice, the title and the alias. And it doesn't quite build it for you, but you can see how easy it is to just quickly quickly put some information together there. Now, if I go to check errors now, I haven't saved this report. It will tell me I have to save the report first. So I'm going to save myself the trouble and just save it. And then I'll check for errors. And it tells me quite rightly that my query is correct. And I wouldn't expect anything less for a really complex query like that. You can see if we run the profiler, it actually gives you, a whole lot of information about how good or otherwise your query is as well. And the explain SQL is standard SQL information. So if I ran this report now, so if I save and close, and this is my test report title is here. If I view it, I'm going to get nothing. I've got absolutely nothing because I actually selected no columns in the report. So if we go back into it again, go to columns, we can do this thing called discover columns. So in our query here, we've got these 3 columns. We could hand code them by knowing what their names were, ID, title, and alias. That would be easy enough. But we can hit this discover columns, and it basically populates what it finds from the query itself. So obviously that doesn't work if your query doesn't work. So that's step 1 is do the check your query. So what this then gives us is at a field level in the report, it lets us pick and choose certain things to do with each field. So it gives us our name, and in a global sense, we have this screen here. If we do nothing, it'll take whatever we've got here, but we can fine tune it for each output type and whether we have it in the front end or the back end. So we might want to have this ID called article ID. For example, and if we save that, when we output it, it should give us an article ID as our name, for example. We can also say whether it should be available to be included in the download. So this column, we don't want the ID to be in the download, or we do want it to be in the download. And we can pick and choose that on a format by format basis, but this at the global level, if we don't do anything else, it'll take whatever we've got here. And again, whether this field individually is accessible by certain levels of our hierarchy. Again, we can pick and choose whether this is an ordering column for front end or back end views, and whether it's available in the search options. And still more, with this one field that we're talking about, we can show or not show this field on our view in the front end or the back end. So if we hide that, then that'll still generate, but won't show. But we may want to output it in the export if we're doing further analysis and we want a reference field included in the output, but not in the view. And again, there's some individual things about this particular column. So the ID column, we don't want to do anything, but we may want to have a summary value show up on a value column or a count column or something like that. So really flexible at a field level to show what that field should be able to do. And this is just on one tab. So this is global. We get the same thing front end view, we get the same thing back end view, we get the same thing CSV, pretty much. Excel, obviously CSV has fewer options because it can't do sums and things like that in a footer. But the Excel obviously we can change, what it does depending on the layout of the form. And we can go through every field and make those individual changes. We can also do this, drag them into a different order just by picking up and moving. And you can see that this one here has been altered from its original because it's no longer green, it's orange or yellow. So that's about the columns. Once we've got the column data there, so if we save that now, save and close, and we go back to our view, we can see it's now magically populated some data. And so what we might want to do is put a filter on this report. So to do that, and I must say the one thing which I find a little bit frustrating is you can't view the view in the design screen. You actually have to come back out of the report and view it from here. Not that that's a major, but that's just a little, could be a bit of a time saver. I've done something to it now. Everything's, we'll just wait, shall we? I seem to have upset it, and nothing would surprise me more. Okay, let's just go back to where we started here. Okay, so we can put various filters on the report. So I'll just put some text above the report, just for good measure. We can put a filter on. So the filters are a little bit tricky to sort of get your head around, but they're really, really flexible once you work them out. So essentially, you can add a filter of anything, and we'll call it topic. Once you've set this filter name, you can't change it. So you can delete it and put it back again, but you can't change it. So spell, that'd be good. We can have these types of field values: text radio drop-down, text area checkbox, and calendar. So we can do something as simple as a checkbox list. And we can set the default value, which will be in line, so that the checkboxes go across the page, for example. And if I just pick up some quick text here, just bear with me. We can put a single list of values in a checkbox list or a drop-down list, or we can use a SQL query to populate a checkbox or other type of list. So we've got some quite good options. And if I do that, what that will do is actually default tick those top three when we save this field and add it to the report. So again, we can say where it's going to be visible, front end, back end, on export, and what have you. And I haven't used this, but I understand that you can put some quite smart filters at this level with PHP filtering or PHP syntax filtering, and it inserts it as it generates the query. There's also some MySQL equivalents in the system as well. So if we just basically save and close that, we've got this nice filter, and we can say, is it enabled? Answer yes. We're not going to connect it to anything at the moment, but just to show you what it does. And again, we can make it available to a group of our choosing, or everybody, so we can filter it down. So if I just save that and show you what that does. We've got pre-selected options, and it's telling me the topic is invalid because it's not included in any part of the query, but we're up with the title. And what happened to my text? It's gone, never mind. But basically, if we submitted that report to run, it would interrogate the filter and populate the results accordingly. So I'll show you some of those in some of the reports I've pre-built, but you get the idea. It's quite simple to put some of these filters on. And we go back to here, and we can say that it's, we can add an additional type of filter. And it can be a text filter or a radio or a drop down or a calendar or some other type of filter. And again, you've got a few more options with the different filter types. You can have a multiple check or not on a drop down. And you have a space here for an empty option. So one of the things that I had trouble with the filters was I created a base report, which I needed to replicate for about 60 different individual branches of data. And my query, I put the filter on, but because the filter had no default value, it basically would crash the report until I worked out that you need to use these sneaky things. They've got an if statement, which you can build into your filters and into your report queries as you go, so that you don't have empty values. But you can also fill these with default values from your value list, or same with SQL, you can actually have a default value for a SQL query so that it doesn't return no rows and doesn't try and crash the report. Again, you can say whether this is visible on any of the formats of output and how much space it should allow for a drop down, which is all fairly standard stuff that we're used to. So if I've got these two filters, and if I wanted to actually bring them into the report, it's this field here, which is the tag that it uses in the query. So basically, we can go to the query and go where alias in the title, like, and then we would, or equals, and then we would put something like source, which is the name of our field in brackets like this. So this query won't return anything because it's the actual filters are not valid. and I'll take you to some that I've done already, but you can see basically you can build up a where clause quite easily. It does give you a bit of instruction down the bottom here, and this is what I mean about the filter. So by putting this code here, if the filter tag, basically if there is a value in the filter tag, so in our case source, then and the email is like source, then it includes it as part of the query. But if it's not, it excludes it when it runs the query. You have to be quite cunning if you've got an and statement or an or statement in your data query, and you're including a filter tag. You have to remember what type of field you're using. So if it's a multi-select, you want to have an in statement, or a like statement if it's a single value, for example. So you just have to sort of play around with some of those things. But it's pretty good. I'm just going to take that where clause off there, because otherwise this report will not run any data out. And actually, I'm just going to remove those two filters from the screen, so they're no longer enabled. And view the report. There's some data, lovely. We can download it from here. We've got all the options available, download options available. If I go back into here, go back into download, no. We can take CSV off the download list for this particular report. Just as easy as that. And there's the file that it generated, which is not a very exciting file. So it's basically produced the file. Now you can see here it's got the ID column, and if we talked earlier about making that column not available. So in Excel, in columns, the ID column, we want it to be gone in Excel. For it. And there it is, it's gone. So it's actually removed the column on the second time it ran. So pretty easy. You can also populate, use the report name, the report number, and include it in an article. So you can actually use it in your general content as well. So just let me just get rid of this out of the road. So basically, the report number here, we could include it in an article by using the text. So let me find it. I haven't done this yet, but I'm assured that it works. Basically, the format is this. Basically, here you can include it with report ID equals 1, and that'll pop the report straight into the content of your article, a regular article. So it's pretty pretty flexible, pretty functional. I'll show you a couple of reports that I've done with a more complex query. While we're on this page, this is the manual that comes with it. It's pretty comprehensive, lots of screenshots, lots of example code, how to pick various elements from the tags, and so on, and how to do sort of more complex query reports. So you can, if you can't find what you're looking for in here, then you haven't looked hard enough. It is pretty comprehensive. So so that's the manual. So I'll just pull up a example site. Just bear with me. This is running in version 3, obviously, when it comes to life.
Is the speed a reflection of the subject matter of this site? Sure.
Yeah, they're not in a hurry. Okay, so basically I've got a number of different categories broken out into different sort of groups. So here, for example, is a subscription by branch 100. So they've got a number of branches in this organization, and they all want to report their individual members separately. So this data is coming out of Membership Pro, with a reasonable bit of shortening of my code here to bring certain data across. But basically, you can see here, it's bringing plan data, membership categories, subscriber information, and a custom field from the membership system. I have selected a particular custom field that I wanted. And this is where my query became a little bit tricky, because I wanted a checkbox list which contained the examples that I used in the previous checkbox example. So they could be a couple, it could be a single, could be a couple life or a single life, sort of what have you. And I had to construct this if statement so that it opened up and closed up correctly within the if, and also where the alias of the branch is 100. So that basically delivers my query. So, and that's what it actually, I can test that actually works, because you can see here, although I've used the common Joomla internal notation, you can see that it actually changes ready for you to actually run that query in your PHPMyAdmin or tool of choice. So that's quite nice, and it's definitely correct. So that's good. And how that runs, basically, I've got that checkbox list showing in a horizontal way, pre-selected. And we can basically do all of that nicely. And and I have not got the export functions on this report on the screen, but basically it's pretty quick. That's looking through a couple of thousand. I think there's 3,000 members in the database, so it's zipping through them pretty quick. And again, there's another report which is just a bit more simple, and that was sort of the report I started with, which basically has the plans that are available in summary form. But you know, it's pretty handy, I think. Pretty handy little utility if you're wanting to sort of populate or extract data. So my requirements were mostly for display and export, and in some cases more complex or higher up the hierarchy they go, they may want to have branch selector. So basically it will allow them to choose a branch or many branches from the drop-down list, as well as the type, so they can do some analysis of the current membership data. But that's pretty much what I wanted to show. If anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to have a crack and see if we can answer them. It's not badly priced. I think it's about $60 or $80. So
it looks extremely useful, Stuart.
Pretty good.
Oh, the emailing one, that would be something we didn't test.
Oh, yeah.
Actually. So on the emailing, we've got this really simple report. We can actually go into here and set up an email with the contents of the report, and it will, when you choose email as your download option, or actually you can create a link. And there is one that I prepared earlier.
That wget option could be really useful if you were wanting to import into another system and that was kind of automated.
Yeah. So basically, you set in the individual report, you can set to allow email by URL. So where I thought this could be really useful is for scheduling. You can actually create the report, create the URL, which is basically, if I put a secret in here, secret.
I'll never guess that.
That there is the code to put in the cron, or to actually just run it. And basically it would send the report off to the email. So I did do one earlier and it actually came up quite successfully. It was just my simple report. But yeah, basically it turns up in your email in short order. But yeah, you can use that for obviously reports where you don't want people involved, or you want to regularly send them information. You can just pump it out and have it appear in their email. I think this one might have been. one that I set the email up in. No, it was one of them. I was playing around with it before. No. Must have blitzed it. This one. So there, because it had all the valid values set in this form, by simply clicking this email report URL, it copied the link up into the browser, and actually in a moment or two, the email will turn up in my email. But it includes the report. So anyone got anything else? Any comments?
That's quite good, Stuart. Very comprehensive.
Yeah, it's got lots of low-level functionality. You know, like the way you can filter fields at a report output level is quite incredible. You know, it's you can have this group of people who can see the report, but they can't see this field on it. So that's quite interesting in itself. So we've got some pretty smart stuff going on under the covers, I reckon.
So I guess with the external databases, would you be able to build reports that combined, say, for example, if you could do a match on username or email, be able to prepare a report that combine data from two databases?
I assume you should be able to do that. And what I've done, I'll see if I can find. I've built some reports out of the membership system, doing some old to new comparisons. So this is a site I've converted from a bespoke membership database into Membership Pro. And I brought some information across into custom fields and then had to flatten it because the response was too slow. So I've created some views to flatten out the data. So they work really well. And by the same logic, you could even create linked servers or something like that to compare the data. It wouldn't be hard. I would imagine that's possible, but there's only one way to know, and I'd have to give it a go and see for sure.
So with the emails, does it send the contents of the report in the email, or does it send it as an attachment?
Well, you know, just see if I can pull up the one I sent, the one that's just arrived. Which has gone to my other email. Just lost it, man. Oh, there it is. What happens when you have too many screens, Patrick? So basically, it embeds it as an attachment. Sorry, I'm not sure if you had what options we've got to send that out. So I go back to test emails. Yeah, let's see. If I make it HTML and then send it. Let's see what that one does. Just have to wait a minute. It may embed it as a HTML email, I'm not sure. But the fact that you can choose whether the email version is a PDF or an Excel or a CSV or a whatever is still quite useful.
Mm. It seems to have a lot of potential. Like you could deep dive into it a fair bit, I would think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to take, it is. No, it includes it as a attachment, HTML attachment. Yeah, that's not very friendly.
Probably not a preferred format then.
No. Well, you could make it a bit tidier. It was just that was the entire contents of the user table with one record in it, all of the columns.
Yeah.
So it probably wasn't the best thing to choose, but yeah.
You'd think if you were getting, your aim is to get data out, you're probably wanting, Excel or CSV or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Excel probably.
Yeah.
So. Anyway, that's all there is to report, really.
Very powerful tool by the look of it.
Yeah, it's not bad price wise.
They make pretty good kit. I've also used their bridge with PHP BB for years, which I'm trying to get rid of finally. But yeah, it actually works. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it. Reports. I'll just see how much it is. $59 US, which is not bad in the scheme of things. Like you could spend that long building one report.
Yeah,
Easy.
By hand.
easy.
All right. Well, that's it.
Thanks, Stuart. That was good.
No problem.
It's good to see that they're J4 compatible straight off, they've got-
Yeah, it's the same installer. It just runs on both. I hadn't installed it literally till about 4 o'clock this afternoon on Joomla 4. I set up a new J4, included the sample data, and just installed it, and it worked. So, that's testament to the quality of their code for sure.
I can see how that would work really well for the independent retirees. Yeah.
Yeah, and other people who want extracts of data for even like the e-commerce solutions.
That's what I was wondering. Would it work
File.
with J2? Yeah.
Yeah, I get heaps of requests from clients, like a lot of the Joomla shopping carts and stuff in particular are fairly basic when it comes to reporting requirements. So it could fill a gap there a bit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to do things like MailChimp extracts, from your customer database, all that sort of thing for Zoho campaigns or, Klaviyo or whatever. You can do a whole lot of really simple things without having to give people access to SQL tools or anything crazy. So,
It can be very hard, right? Very hard work to compose queries in shop databases. The links are very often complex.
obscure.
Yeah.
A lot of,
So,
a lot of inner join action, Russell.
yeah, I think probably most shopping carts would have specialised third-party reporting packages. I know there's one that I always use for Virtumart that just basically navigate and understands the linkages in the Virtumart database. So it just gives a good set of sales reports, and it's a simple package. For online shops, maybe, they're a special case. I don't know that I would want to write a reporting package over an e-commerce shop if I had if I had a better choice. But it'd still work if you put the work in. I can see that. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Virtumart has a lot of options in that area, Russell, but I think some of the more basic Joomla shopping carts are a bit lacking. Like even, sometimes when a client says, oh, how many copies of this book sold, or this product sold, and it's kind of like, oh, yeah, there's a report about your top selling products or the products that are sold this month. Sometimes the most basic thing is difficult, where this could help in that, I think.
Yeah, and even things like, we quite often get what's our sales to the end of Sunday. You don't want to be there at midnight, but you want to capture what the transactions were and have them in somebody's email first thing in the morning. That's all. You just set up a cron and run your report emailing link. And
that's what I was wondering about with Karen, whether that would be perfect for her.
Yeah. I think it's really well constructed, and I think it's got some really cool functionality, which I've only scratched the surface, but I can see the potential in it.
So we've got a client who takes orders right up until about midnight on Saturday night, and then on Sunday morning she literally picks the orders fresh. So to take away that complexity of her having to log into the Joomla site and run a report or download a report herself and receive it by email would just be fabulous for her. Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and just reading the email.
The tricky part is trying to sell your time to the client to build such a report. It's probably the trick.
Yeah, clearly. So nice to offer these things, but it's like, we'll just work for 2 days on that.
If I had one, not criticism of that software, Stuart, you think I could probably improve the SQL query builder tool a little bit. I mean, if you're able to select those fields, you think you should be, like in PHP My Admin, for example, there's like a select button and an insert button, and to be able to add the where and from and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there probably is, but I don't use it, so because I'm so used to just doing queries in the back.
So let me guess, if you double click on the link where it has the from or the where, then it appears in the box.
There is. I did sort of skim through the instructions, and there was some mechanism for inserting joins and various other things, but I just did it by hand. So
fair enough.
What I do. But yeah, I think there is definitely. I think the thing that's quite nice is the explain and the query profiler, so you can see where your queries are going pear-shaped if they're taking a long time to run. That's quite useful for complex queries. For little queries, it makes no difference, but for something that's a bit tricky and outputting without having to go then write your query, because you can in the query builder use the actual table name, so the table prefix, or you can use the substitute hash underscore notation and it'll convert. So it just means that you're if you use the hash underscore, then you can export and re-import it in another site or another system, and not have to worry about recalibrating every query. So
You export and import reports?
yeah, so there is an export button, an import button. There's an import button, so I assume there must be an export button. I haven't found it yet though. Hang on.
May not be one.
That's a big assumption, Stuart.
Well, you know, I'm fairly confident there is, and there is. So let me just show you that while we're on the. I'll just reshare my screen. So up the top was the import button on the title screen, and that actions button was grayed out because I hadn't selected anything. So basically,
Yeah.
So what does featuring a report do?
what's that? Sorry,
I said, what does featuring a report do?
like a featured article.
Oh, yes, but well, you're publishing them on your homepage, and yeah,
Well, you could.
I guess so. Fair enough.
You could have a a traffic counter or any.
I'm going to suggest that's a pretty dry website.
Well, yeah, I think that they've gathered up a lot of the standard sort of things like useful and again metadata in a report. I'm not sure because you're going to have it embedded in an article or displayed on a page. I'm not sure, but it's good that it's there, and who knows. But yes, you can import and export.
Nice.
Stuart, in the package,
Yeah.
do you also get a menu item type so that a report can show up as the content area on a page?
Yeah, I believe so. So hang on. I haven't got that far yet, but let's do that.
Yeah, that'd do it.
A
There
report
you go.
category or display a list of reports for a category.
There you go. And that's an area where you might get some use out of the featured attribute.
You probably would.
Well spotted, Russell.
Yep.
And you probably also use the featured attribute if there is a matching module type that displays a report in a module somewhere.
Okay, well, let's have a look and just investigate that while we're on the. That's not what we want. No. Don't think there is a module.
Well, it doesn't matter. You can put content in a module and just call a report from an article or something.
So there's a plugin apparently which we might need to enable for.
Okay.
Where's plugins these days?
Anything to do with reports in that list? Oh, there we are. Oh, that's the editor button.
So that was the button which basically showed up. showed up in the content area. So it is enabled. So if we go to content, showed in the documentation, and I'll have to have a look on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there's probably an editor XTD plugin that would do that.
Yeah, could be. Let's find the manual, which I've closed, and read it. But yeah, that's where your feature would likely be useful.
Should be a module, really.
There's only one. It's only that one.
Yeah, that processes the short code in the article that
Well,
produce the
if I can
report.
just quickly, I'll just see if I can pull up the manual again, because basically it did show, on this screen here, it actually shows for version 3. And it says the plugin which is auto installed. So maybe I have to edit this plugin. Yeah, this should show the editor button, Russell, to insert the report into an article, but it's not showing up.
If you go back to your plugins list and you filter for the editor XTD plugin type, it might show up on under a different name.
I'll just have a look in the version 3 site just to see if it's got the same thing. Just hang on one sec. So this is version 3, and there is the.
Yep.
Oh no, that's not it either. I'll have to find out how that works, because it definitely says that it's good to go as soon as the plugin's enabled, this edit plugin.
Well, just try your filter options on this list. Clear your search box. Try filter options for, yeah, they're the ones. Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, them. So no, there isn't one.
No.
Yeah, that's not normal, because you usually use that to secure those editor buttons from, your customers' editors who you shouldn't have access to some features in the editor. It's nice to have those separate. So, okay, well, it's something to be aware of.
So this report, so on version 3, this is actually the same thing as this report. They've changed it to a report table. So the documentation is out of sync a little, but basically that gives me my list of reports that I've created. So that would allow me to insert that report straight into the thing using the editor. So it's this whole button bar doesn't appear in the Joomla 4, so maybe it's just a Joomla 4 placement issue. Because if I go to content on here, it doesn't appear at all.
Is it under one of the editor tabs, the tools tab, or maybe the little ellipsis at the end there? Is there anything else?
Have a look there.
No.
Doesn't appear. I have to. But now I'm intrigued. I'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
Definitely should be there. According to oil. Anyway, that's something for me to look into.
Very good anyway. I mean, you can get around all of those practical problems, placing the data in different.
Yeah, like the syntax is not complicated. It's open bracket report ID equals and layout equals the layout. So it's not too complicated to copy and paste.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I used to do a lot of chronoforms, form builders and report builders, or form builders and view builders, usually come in pairs. And chronoforms had something called chrono connections. It was a reporting tool. Now I use more RS Forms Pro than chronoforms, but RS Forms Pro has no report builder, and it's very weak in terms of view production. You know, it's okay for the basics. So if you wanted extended reporting out of an RS Forms database or some sort of app that you had built with RS Forms Pro, this is where you would use something like your tool. That'd be a good match.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of RS Form Pro as well, Russell, but yeah, it has limitations, I think, once you start getting into.
Yeah, it really doesn't do views.
No.
Really, it doesn't. All right for simple applications, but you know, if you need to get clever, you know, for some sort of commercial process, then you need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
One of the things which I find incredibly frustrating is the custom field. The reporting out of custom fields is terrible. The ability to report it so slow on large data. So I ended up having to basically create flattened views just to get some report.
Is that due to the custom fields or alter reports?
No, using any report tool. Putting stuff into custom fields is great. I love how flexible they are, but reporting out of them is dog shit. The indexing, like you can put additional indexing on, and I've done all sorts of things like I've got some custom fields so I've got like some 40 different custom fields on a record, and you try and sort of aggregate that data, and there's no easy way to do it because no native cross-tab query in MySQL. Pivot query, you can hand build them, but there's no natural way to do it. So
true.
Sort of workarounds.
True. Very true. That's where you got to denormalize some of that stuff. If you've got heavy requirements in that area, you've basically got to simplify the table. You've got to use some of the data analysis techniques. For performance reasons, but that was always the case.
Yeah. Right, we got anything else we need to talk about for the next few minutes? I think we're done with auto reports or alert reports.